everybody. Congratulations on making it this far into the Transformation Challenge. My name's Erinn. I'm here to talk to you today about one of your 7 foundational movements, the squat. We'll talk about what a squat is, why it's important as it pertains to your everyday life, and what we do inside of the studio. I'll also give you a few different variations and how you can squat a little bit better. So what is a squat? Your squat is one of your key foundational movement patterns. It's also one of your key lower body push exercises. It's a compound exercise, meaning that you're working multiple joints all at once, which is very efficient as we work out in class. It's also a movement pattern that you'll perform from the time you're born all the way from a baby for the entirety of your entire life. So here's what it looks like. You'll set up your squat with your feet somewhere between shoulder to hip width apart. And the width just depends on a lot of different things, the structure of your body. Mostly we're looking for comfort and also to where your knees are in line with your toes, if not slightly to the outside of your toes. Once you have a good solid base, you're gonna keep your chest lifted, and then we'll initiate the movement by sitting your hips down and back like we're sitting into a chair. Chest lifted, feet planted, sit the hips down and back. We'll sit down to your deepest range, and then at the bottom, drive through the midfoot, stand tall. So nice and in control. That's what it looks like. That's your most classic movement of a squat. Why do we do this in exercise? So when we are training, we're actually practicing movement patterns. You're gonna squat all day, every day, in some type of variation. But when we train, we practice it, and however we practice it is most likely how we're going to perform it in our life and in athletic performance. So the idea is if we can practice it in a controlled setting, under load, with perfect form, then hopefully we'll be able to do it in an uncontrolled setting when you're not consciously thinking about having a perfect squat. You'll be able to do it at least pretty good enough to help decrease your risk of injury. So now that we know why a squat is important, let's talk about a few different variations and how we can get different benefits from each one. So your most classic variation would be a goblet squat. We're holding the weight up at the top, and we'll go back to that same setup that I showed at the beginning. The load is at the top, so we've got a little bit more core activation, sitting the hips back and then standing up tall, just like I showed before. During a squat, you get all of your lower extremity muscles activated. You're getting all of your quad muscles, all of your hamstrings, your glutes, and even your calves, but also, especially when this goblet exercise, you're getting a little bit more core work and upper body work as you hold the dumbbell up. That's gonna be your most centered gravity there. We also perform a sumo squat, where we'll hold the weight a little bit lower. Our feet, the stance will be a little bit wider than their hips, our toes slightly turned out. We'll still keep our chest lifted and we'll sit the hips down and back, but because the foot placement is wider, you're gonna get a little bit more glute activation, a little bit more groin activation, and so it's just a nice way to play around with the muscles that we get more work from. If you have any knee injuries or you're trying to take some pressure off of your knees, this is a great option for you if you still want to continue to squat and get really close to that same movement pattern. We also practice a squat with the weights on the outside of our body. This squat variation is kind of going to force us into a slightly closer stance. The closer your feet are, the more quad activation you're getting, so a little bit more emphasis it puts on our knees and less on your hips. You may also find that with the closer stance, your chest might hinge forward a little bit more. That's not a big deal, that's okay, as long as you've still got the nice upright posture. So those are your most common variations in an Orange Theory class. Let's talk about a few different common errors. Probably the most common that I see is the caving in of the knees. We practice this a lot when we put our mini bands on. And this can happen for a lot of different reasons, but typically what you'll see is as we go down into the squat, the knees might sink in, or as you go down into the squat, they might be good, but at the bottom, we dive in to scoop ourselves back up. A couple different things could be going on here. Most of the time, we're either having weak glutes or we're having issues activating our glutes. One really simple fix is to act like our feet are screws into the ground and we're driving them down and out. You can literally see my knees open up as I drive down and out. If you think about that mini band on, just keep that constant tension. Next one I like to talk about is an excessive forward lean. Oftentimes when people hit this variation, it's not necessarily dangerous, but it becomes more of a hip hinge. So if our goal is to focus on the squat pattern, we're gonna take the chest and tip it up and sit our weight heavy into your heels. You may have a little imbalance at first, but if you are having that imbalance, you've got that bench there, it's always there for you. And if you do fall, all you do is sit down. Last one. This one can kind of be a little tricky to see, and it might be a little tricky to notice all at once, but you might notice it if you do this excessively all the time. Call it the speed squat. We actually do a speed squat sometime in class, and it's a good exercise if it's done with correct form. But if you're rushing through the bottom position and then just collapsing at the bottom, you're really missing out in the best part of the squat. As we're going down, working the eccentric portion, there's a switch, and it's a smooth it should be a smooth transition from the eccentric portion up to the concentric portion. If there's not a smooth switch, you might lose some tension through your trunk, and it's gonna put a ton of pressure on your lower back. And if you're having pain in your lower back, the best thing that you can do is slow your squat down. Focus on slightly tucking in the tailbone, keeping that lower abdomen engaged throughout the entire movement, maybe even pausing or sticking the bottom position before you stand up. Those are some common errors. If you're doing any of those things, fix them, work on them, practice them. That's why we do these squats in class, so you can get better at doing them outside. So, in conclusion, your squat, high reward for relatively low risk. We do these a lot because we do squats a lot outside of here. You're gonna get, it's highly efficient. With the multi-joint exercises, you're working nearly every single muscle in your body in one exercise. It also has a super high carryover into athletic events and your life because of all of those muscle groups working as one and working as a team. So with all of those different muscle groups working as a team, you're getting strength and mobility all through your body, all for the price of just one exercise. So I hope that all of these little tips, tricks help you out, and next time that you squat, think of me. Thank you guys.